Aha.
Got it. Okay.
Oh, I look like Minnie too.
Hey, there he is.
Yeah.
Yeah,
We got,
look at
we got a
you.
picture.
Yay.
Hey.
Will
I
you
think
the
we-
problem solver here for her?
Trying. She'll be right back.
Okay.
Man, I got a picture.
That's what husbands are for.
That's why I have an IT director here.
Maybe I was saying that's what husbands are for.
Absolutely. It's so much easier to just say, would you please do this?
Yeah, exactly.
Plus, I found in my experience, husbands like to fix things for you anyway.
You're here twice,
Say
Pam.
hello.
Hi, my class is starting, Joanne.
Now Steve's twice. Well,
Say
was.
hello.
Everything okay?
Say hello. Hi.
Okay, I'll call you back after class. Bye-bye.
Hi.
At least she called at the beginning of class, right?
I'm seeing doubles.
Okay.
That I can't help.
Must be my eyes.
I got a minute after. Shall we give again or
Okay,
Yeah.
wait a minute?
goes here. My prayer stuff here. Okay.
Yeah, let me get my blessing.
I blend into this black chair. It's weird.
We only see your head and neck.
Yeah, my
Yeah, exactly. In the back of your chair. Let's go ahead and begin with the blessings and then we can discuss maybe something for the rabbi a couple weeks. Together, Baruch Atah Adonai, Eloheinu melech haolam, Asher Kiddushanu B'mitzvotav, V'tzivanu lazot divrei Torah.
Torah.
Blessed are you, Adonai our God, ruler of the world, who has sanctified us with your commandments, commanded us to engage in the words of Torah. Amen. All right, Rabbi, she's all yours, and we got Marianne available now.
And Donna.
What page in the book are we on?
We are on page 134,
34.
Gimel.
Yeah.
In the
Perek Gimel.
volume 2?
Book volume
Yes.
2.
Volume 2, Leviticus.
Right.
Okay.
So we would like volunteers to lead the Torah study for the next 3 Wednesdays, I think.
Okay.
That is, okay, so today is the 8th.
So it'd be the 15th, 20th, 22nd, and 29th. The 15th is eye for an eye, tooth for a tooth. And this next one is the mitzvah of caring for the poor. And on the 29th is rewards and punishments, consequences for our choices.
Whoa.
Goodness.
So can we have some volunteers?
I'll do the second one, the 22nd.
22nd, okay.
Just give me the topic again, Steve.
The mitzvah of caring for the poor, it's on page 155.
Okay.
I'm hoping maybe Richard might take one.
Yeah,
He's not here today to find out yet.
He would be good at that.
yes, he would.
So what is the next one is what? Eye for an eye?
Eye for an eye, tooth for tooth.
Oh, I think I'd rather do that than caring for the poor.
Okay, I'll do caring for the poor. I'll do caring for the poor.
It does sound more interesting. That's why I thought that was.
And
the
what's the
last
third one,
It was
Steve?
something about some mitzvahs.
The third one is rewards and punishments, consequences of others.
Okay, I'll do
God,
that.
that's deep.
Okay.
All right, go back to me, Steve, so I can write it down.
What, me too, what page?
158 to 161.
For
For your, if you,
me or for
are you doing
reward
punishments?
and
punishments?
punishment?
Okay, yeah, it's on 158 to 161.
Where's an eye for an eye?
Eye for an eye is 146 to 149.
All right, I will take the middle one. I don't really want it, but I will take it. And what is that page?
The mitzvah of caring for the poor.
Yeah.
Okay.
Where it is.
I can find it, I'm sure. So it's that, but that date is the 22nd, right?
Yes. And eye for an eye is, who's doing that?
Me,
Oh,
Okay.
no, that's,
that's me,
Okay.
That's Minna.
Minya.
wait,
Okay. We got it, Rabbi.
Okay,
what happened? Wait, I had
ahead.
my phone ring. What page was that?
Hang on.
I'm sorry.
That's
I
okay.
wonder how that happened.
155 to 158.
Thank you.
Yep.
Right, I'm gonna
Now I'm
step
doing
away
it
and take this call.
29th or the 22nd?
Uh, 29th is Mary Ann, and the 15th is Minya. That's you.
No, I can't do it on the 15th.
Okay.
Because,
Oh, then
okay,
switch with me then.
You're the 22nd?
I'm the 22nd, yeah.
All right,
Okay.
I'll switch with Marcia.
So Marcia, you're gonna be the eye for an eye. Okay, and Minya,
Okay, I'll
talk to
you later.
I got it. Okay, now,
All right, bye.
first of all, I'd like to welcome Chris. Hi, Chris. Can you hear us?
All right.
There he is. Chris
There he
is
is.
new to us. He's just joining, and we want to welcome you.
Okay,
Hope it's an
so,
enjoyable and exciting experience for you.
Thank you very much. I haven't been to Torah study in a million years, so this is.
Oh, well, we just, it's about time.
Buckle up.
a million years is a really long time.
Yeah,
You
Okay.
On
teach,
geologic
do you
timescales,
teach
yeah.
aviation?
millennial.
Yeah, I'm an academic advisor for a university aviation program.
oh, wow.
Okay. My
Mm.
daughter, that was her bat mitzvah gift, was aviation, flying plane lesson.
Oh,
She
right on.
didn't wait until she was old enough, but that we held it in abeyance and then
Oh, right on.
Oh,
Yeah.
neat. Very cool. Rabbi, she's all yours.
Okay.
okay.
Good morning, everyone, and welcome to Chris, who lived in Japan for a while, correct?
Yeah, about 20 years we spent in overseas.
Wow. And we had an oneg a few months ago, and he brought Japanese desserts.
Ooh, I missed it.
Yeah, if you were there that week and if you noticed them in the side of the table, then you were lucky. Anyway, good morning, everyone. We are on page 134. Can we love others as ourselves? So there's a new book out. Judaism is all about love. Just came up. I believe the author is Shai Held, Held, and he argues that love is the central force behind Judaism. But here the question's a little more specific, which is, the commandment in the Torah says, love your neighbor as yourself. And so this would theoretically be impossible. You can't love your neighbor as yourself. You may not love your neighbor at all because he may leave garbage out front and he may make too much noise. I mean, I would joke and say that my neighbors are playing Led Zeppelin really loud until 3 a.m, but you wouldn't believe me anyway, because when I walk the dogs after dinner, everyone's lights are already out and they're sleeping. So anyway, welcome, Richard, and this is Chris, Richard, Chris,
Hi,
Richard,
Richard.
and welcome to you. Richard is got some very dramatic scenery that he is traveling to from week to week. So the question is, can love be commanded? You know, love is an emotion. You have to feel it. You can't be ordered to feel it, right? Yes, Marion.
You can do the things that you would do if you loved. You can act like you're in love. You can act like you give love. And eventually it will turn into love.
Okay, so fake it till you make it, I think I think there was a famous TED talk, fake it till you make it, and then a lot of these Silicon Valley startup CEOs faked it a little too much and they got in
They
prison,
got caught.
and that expression fell out of favor. Maybe you shouldn't fake it too much.
I thought a politician came up with that expression.
Oh, well. But
You can always act with gimilut chasadim. You can always do acts of kindness, whether you act. Yeah.
so Marion's saying you could always, do the things you would do if you did love someone. So I may not love my neighbor, but at least I can, leave, apple pie at their door just to be nice to them, or trim their hedges or clean up the oranges that fell off their tree, so that rats don't take their oranges and eat them inside my engine, which happened about a year and a half ago. So that's the question. So the question is, what is the definition of love? What does that mean to love in a biblical context? And how do we interpret this? Now, from an interpretive point of view, there's what they call biblical hermeneutics, which is a fancy way of saying how you interpret things. And so the rabbis have all sorts of hermeneutical tools. So they do not necessarily interpret things literally. So this is what separates Judaism from Christianity in some ways. You have in Christianity what's called Christian fundamentalism, which is where certain groups of Christians will take the Christian Bible, which includes the Jewish Bible, and they interpret it literally as literally as they can in all situations and environments.
Like the ultra Orthodox.
No. That's my point. Is that even the ultra Orthodox, they may be fundamentalist in a different way, but they're not fundamentalists in the Christian sense of biblical fundamentalism. Everybody, no matter how Orthodox they are, Skinny wants some more fish. So, oh boy.
Somebody needs attention.
He doesn't want attention. He wants fish. But
Oh,
he's not getting it. So this is the next best thing. So, for example, so even the most ultra Orthodox Jews are not fundamentalists in the biblical sense, in that they don't interpret the Bible literally. They interpret the Bible according to how the rabbis of the Talmud interpreted it, which is not literal. So they may not want to deviate from the Talmud, which makes them kind of fundamentalists, but they're Talmudic fundamentalists, not biblical fundamentalists.
Okay.
The rabbis of the Talmud totally reinterpret things. So for example, the thou shalt not boil a kid in its mother's milk. The rabbis interpret that as referring to do not eat milk with meat. That's not what it says. Therefore, that's not fundamentalism, right? So the rabbis say, oh, when the Bible says 3 times, thou shalt not boil a kid in its mother's milk, what God is saying is it's talking about the laws of kashrut and not to eat meat with milk. Well, that's totally and completely not what it says in the Bible, but that's the way they interpret it. So they're not biblical fundamentalists at all.
Okay.
So what is the difference? What does the Bible say in that case? Like,
Well, the Bible.
What is the interpretation?
yeah.
Well, interpretation means you're not fundamentalist because you try not to interpret it. But what it says is you shall not take the child of a goat, right? A goat kid is a little goat, right, Steve?
Yeah.
yes,
Kid.
Yeah.
yes.
Take the child of a goat, and you would not heat the mother's milk up on a pot and throw the kill the kid by throwing him into the mother's milk, or kill the kid first and then throw the meat in. Presumably, you wouldn't want to use the mother's milk to murder or to cook the baby. It's not humane, presumably. So
Was
now-
that uh, a practice before Judaism? I can't think of the name of the people, but so that we didn't do that practice as an offering to God.
yeah, there was pagans who may have done that as a pagan practice.
That's what I
Maybe.
meant.
But fundamentalism will just do what the Bible says as closely as we can determine what it says. And then this laptop has the webcam at the bottom of the screen, not the top. So I find that a little bit weird, but you can still see me kind of.
Yes.
You're right there.
But the camera is shooting upwards. So
It looks fine. Yeah.
okay. So that's the thing. That's the thing of being literal. So since we know that the rabbis are not literal, nobody in Judaism is literal about the Bible, we could interpret, what it says in Leviticus chapter 19, verse 18 is love your neighbor as yourself. So we are not obligated to do that exactly the way it says. So there's nothing wrong in Judaism with saying, well, like Marian said, it talks about acting like if you love them. So we may or may not love our neighbor, but we can still, be nice to them, treat them the way you treat your husband or wife or child or someone you love. Because you can't legislate emotions, but you can legislate practices. So that would be a perfectly legitimate interpretation. You don't have to be literal. Now, if you want to follow rabbinic thinking, you can't just make up a new interpretation that's never been talked about by the rabbis. Now, we could do that, but if you wanted to be quote unquote orthodox, you have to pick up on ideas that have already been discussed or that might be discussed. So, once you get into rabbinic thinking, you'll see what they might view as reasonable and what they wouldn't not. You can't come up with new interpretations that have never been talked about. But as Reform Jews, we like to come up with new interpretations. So that's also okay. So that sets the ground rules. So we're not Christian fundamentalists and we're not even Orthodox Jews. So we have a lot of latitude here. Okay, so that's my opening comments. If you have any responses or short pointed comments on other things, this is your time to speak or forever hold your peace.
No.
Okay, so should we start reading? Can we love others as ourselves? Page 134. Do I have a volunteer?
Our readers. Nobody speaking.
Page 134.
Okay,
Okay.
Pam.
Mrs. Katz.
You really can't hear you.
Can't hear you.
Go ahead.
I was hoping somebody else would volunteer, but since you didn't.
Go ahead.
Okay. Can we love others as ourselves? Parsha Kedshim contains one of the most,
Elohim.
thank you, contains one of the most quoted of all commandments within the Torah. Love your neighbor as yourself. What does this statement mean? Can love be commanded? Is it possible for human beings to love others, especially outside their families, with the same level of interest and commitment they have for themselves? What about those
Stop. So clearly the answer to that, I would think, is no, right? You cannot love your neighbor the same way you love your children.
No.
Agreed.
I agree.
right? And if you did, there's that would be a pathology that the psychiatrist would need, you know, there, I mean, I guess there's such a thing that there's people who over care, you know, so they meet you in the supermarket and they suddenly act like they care as much about you as their spouse. That's not healthy. That's not normal. That's not even appropriate. So that would be, if you did that, you would end up in a psychiatrist's couch or in a mental health facility. Okay, sorry, Pam.
Okay, what about those who come to harm us or who treat us unjustly? Can we be expected to love them as we love ourselves? One of the earliest explanations of the Torah's commandment comes in the form of a story told by Rabbi Hillel, a popular teacher of the 1st century BCE. Once a non-Jew challenged him with a promise. I will convert to Judaism if you can teach me the whole Torah while I stand on one foot. Rabbi Hillel,
So this happens to me all the time, you know, so people stand on one foot outside my office and they say, convert me now. But this is a classic story in the Talmud, and you know, it's a longer story. There's several cases, and there's Hillel and there's Shammai, and there's 3 different guys that want to convert, and each one has a different condition. And one of the 3 come to, first they go to Shammai, and they say, you know, please convert me on condition that you teach me the whole Torah while I'm standing 1 foot. And Shammai gets mad because he didn't have a lot of sense of humor, and he picks up a measuring stick and chases the guy away. Then the guy goes to Hillel and says, convert me while I'm standing on while you teach me the whole Torah while I'm standing 1 foot. And Hillel does it. Okay, back to you, Pam.
where are we here?
A popular teacher.
Rabbi Hillel's response was immediate. What is hateful to you, do not do to your neighbor. That's the whole Torah. The rest is commentary. Now go and learn it.
Okay, stop. So what is Hillel citing and what does it say in the Torah? What is the actual words in the Torah?
Love your neighbor as yourself.
Right.
Love yourself.
What does Hillel say?
Do not do what is hateful to your neighbor. Do
Okay.
not do what is hateful to yourself, to your neighbor.
Oh, he's changing, he's interpreting or changing or moderating what's in Leviticus chapter 19. Okay, so what is Hillel's point here? Richard?
Sure.
He's basically saying, if you don't want to hurt yourself, then why are you going to do it to somebody else? Because that's basically what he's saying. He's saying, again, do unto others as others would do unto you. As you would hope others would do unto you.
So does that seem to be a good rephrasing of the original?
He thinks so.
What do
I'm
you
not gonna-
think?
I'm not going to counter him. He's too remote and too erudite for me.
Too renowned.
And he
Well,
knows people.
Richard is being modest. If Richard had studied rabbinics instead of all that medicine stuff, he could have been as wise and as knowledgeable as Hillel by this point. Right? Okay, Marcia.
So it's basically a matter of respect, I think. Respect for other people and that what you're doing, how you're treating them, no? And you can use, there's a lot, I mean, take the thesaurus out and we can find, you know, half a dozen words that are going to do the same sort of thing. It's just basically your attitude towards other people. You know, I was on Facebook, there was a commentary, there was a woman, one of the employees over at Southwest Airlines, and someone was online waiting to get checked in. And when they got to her, they said this woman said to the employee, you know, you are so great, you know, you've been Stan, I've been watching you. You've been so nice to everybody on the line. You got out of line, gave somebody some kids some candy. You all did everything with a smile and very pleasant, and it was just, so nice. And why, how can you do this with considering all this people coming in one after another? And she said, it's just as nice, easy to be nice to people. And it makes me feel good at the end of the day. They both got all teared up. But that's basically it, is basically treating other people as well. So many times, they have everybody, someone will say, well, she's got such problems. How can she be acting nicely? And and I think we all have problems. You just have to, in your contact with other people, you have to be respectful with them. You have to.
And flying is a good example because you run into maybe a quarter of the staff and stuff. They know that how they treat you really isn't affecting their job evaluations or their salary or anything. So like one quarter act really, really nice, and one quarter act really, really nasty, just gratuitously. And the other 50% basically ignore everybody. So, I can kind of see, there are three choices here, and I guess it has more to do with them than with you. But when somebody on the plane, brings you an extra chocolate without you asking or something, or even if you do ask, you feel very, appreciative and nice. Now, you're not going to tip them, right? It's not an environment where you tip them, and you're not going to write a letter to the airline saying that your employee, they don't usually have their full names there anyway, or their employee numbers or anything. When somebody's nasty, I tried complaining once. Somebody was very nasty, and after many emails, I could never get anywhere. Apparently, they have union rules that that complaints cannot actually be filed against the individual employee. So no matter how many times I wrote, they would write me back and they'd say, we're going to take it into consideration, but they wouldn't actually, bring this to the attention of the person's supervisor. Apparently that's not allowed. So
Well, you can be sued these days. You can be sued for tattletale.
Yeah. So
You never know.
so it becomes a matter of person's conscience, how do they want to act? And you can see that based on life experiences, some people will go out of their way to be nice, and some people go out of their way to be mean. And the larger number will go their way not to do anything. So those are the three choices. Okay, sorry, Pam, back to you. So
Okay.
that's Hillel's comment.
It is obvious that Hillel preferred stating the Torah's positive commandment to love your neighbor as yourself in a negative way. On the other occasions, Hillel also deliberately chose a negative formulation instead of a positive one. For example, he taught, if not for myself, who will be for me? If I care only for myself, what am I? And if not, when? He also taught, do not separate yourselves from the community. Do not be certain of yourself until the day of your death. Do not judge your neighbor until you have stood in his place. Do not say, when I have leisure time, I will study. You may never have leisure time. From Hillel's statements, we might conclude that he transported the positive commandment about loving one's neighbor into a negative for formulation because he was convinced that it was easier to understand. We can identify what hurts and harms us. We can say what brings us pain. Hillel's comment counsels that loving our neighbor as ourselves means asking, if my neighbor did this, what I was thinking of saying or doing to him would hurt or harm me. If the answer is it would bring pain or harm, then it must be avoided.
Okay, thank you. Comments? Richard, Donna, Marion.
Well, sometimes with your neighbor or individuals, you have to say some things that are negative. Like, for instance, if your neighbor is constantly leaves trash on your backyard, you might have to tell them, you're throwing trash in my backyard or my receptacle. Would you please refrain from doing that? I'd appreciate it. So sometimes things are negative and you have to be
And how would that, how would
mean
that,
about it.
and
But
how
you
would
may-
that fit into what we're talking about here?
Well, you would be explaining to the individual, but you wouldn't be chastising him. You wouldn't telling him you're a dumb jerk, stop doing it. You're just saying, I'd appreciate it if you would not do that.
Remember, was it Senator Rand Paul? And he's a doctor and his neighbor was a doctor. And one of them was blowing leaves and collecting it on his own property, but right next to the other guy's property, just to irritate him. And they ended up getting into a fist fight and they both got hurt and they both got in big trouble. You know, for something that if they had just been able to negotiate it through, it's just, you know, very immature, you know, and
He obviously didn't read this part of the Torah.
Yeah,
I think they
I
did.
think that,
Yeah, sorry, Mary.
I'm sorry. I was just gonna say that I think today's catchphrase for loving thy neighbor is, if you can be anything, if you choose to be anything, be kind.
Yeah.
And I think that that kind of sums it up. You need to be good to everyone and you won't always get it back, but it's the right thing to do is to be good to others.
Mhm. Yes, Don.
Well, as Richard said, to speak kindly to the person who throws the trash into your yard. But there are people who would turn around and take their trash and throw it in their backyard. And also I saw absolutely, when I was living in one place that this lady walked her dog on other people's yards. And when the dog did his messes, she didn't pick him up. She just left him there. So one of her neighbors scooped up the dog's messes and went and put it in a plastic bag and put it at her front door. Now, there are all ways of handling things, but and then also you have to realize that there are people who do not love themselves, really. It doesn't have to mean that they go out and commit suicide, but they just don't think that highly of themselves. Someone else is better than they are. Jealousy comes into being. And so there are some that when it says love your neighbor as yourself, there are some people who do not love themselves.
Interesting. So if they don't love themselves, they can't love others.
That's what it's saying. But I don't know. It's very difficult because of the mind comes into this, and we don't always understand our own minds, but much less somebody else's.
Okay, Chris,
Very
comment?
good. Steve?
Chris, you have to unmute.
There, I was looking for the unmute button. Yeah, it's curious. I was thinking about the idea of loving someone else more than perhaps you love yourself. People who suffer from clinical depression or self-hatred, oftentimes, I wonder how they feel. Like, do they love other people? Do they hold others in higher regard than they hold themselves or not? It's a curious conundrum.
That's it. That's interesting because also there are always news stories on TV and in the paper where someone actually gave their life for somebody else's life, ran in the way of a coming car to try to rescue somebody, and the person they were rescuing were rescued, but they were killed. And so there are people who do that without thinking.
And without knowing the other party too.
Right,
It's
right. First responders are typical.
Right, exactly.
Exactly.
So,
Okay, back to you, Pam.
Where are we? But
but,
what if our tastes, that one?
yes,
Well, what if our tastes are different from the neighbors? What if my neighbor is hurt by matters or statements that simply do not affect me at all? Is it fair to make judgments about what is hurtful or enjoyable to others from my own narrow perspective? Is it not true that one person's meat is another person's poison?
Hmm.
We are told that Rabbi Akiba, who considered himself a student of Rabbi Hillel, suggested that the commandment, love your neighbor as yourself, was the greatest principle of the Torah. His colleague Ben Azzi disagreed. Ben Azzi argued that the teaching, God created man in the likeness of God, was a more important principle. Ben Azzi's view is that people cannot use their own feelings or attitudes as a basis for deciding how to treat others. Preferences, tastes, and perceptions are what bring happiness, and what brings pain are very difficult. Some people are careless about their property, others are not. Because a person may not consider a remark insulting does not mean that another will agree. You should not say, Ben Azzi explains, since I am hated, let my neighbor be similarly hated, or since I am in trouble, let my neighbor be similarly in trouble. You should remember that both you and your neighbor were created in the likeness of God. In other words, we treat others with respect and love, not because we are commanded to do so, nor because we understand their feelings, tastes, or reactions to be like our own. We are to respect the rights, dignity, and feeling of others because, like us, they were created in God's likeness.
Okay, comments.
we're a quiet bunch today.
Well,
Richard?
Marianne and Richard.
while I agree that people are different and some people are very unhappy and unable at times to be good to others, that doesn't impact your ability to be good to them. It's what your standard is for yourself is what you should share with others. Your understanding of being kind, of being good, of doing the right thing, is what should be shared. If you are a depressed person, it doesn't change your understanding of what it would be to do something nice for someone else. However, if you're schizophrenic or paranoid, other diseases that you may not be able to discern.
There's a person I was in touch with who was very grumpy. So I did my best to try to help them in whatever or offer various things. And I did several things to try to make them happier. And they weren't nasty to me, but they were grumpy. And then we did this again and again. And by the third time, I just kind of gave up. I tried, and the person was complaining about all sorts of stuff. And then I said, but I tried to rectify it. They're complaining about how people behaved 4 or 5 years earlier, and I don't have control over that. So eventually you give up, I think, and just let them do, just be. Finally, I just said, if I can help in any way, let me know.
I didn't know you knew Trump.
We're both New Yorkers. We've been friends for a long time. And
There are
Yep.
some people who just love to be grumpy,
True.
They just like to be miserable. If they're
That's
happy, they're not
true.
happy about being happy.
There's
So
a
how do
poem
you
called
have-
Ida the One Who Suffers.
and how do you fulfill this mitzvah with somebody who's like that? How can you love your neighbors yourself if it's a neighbor that A, you don't know very well, and B, it's a neighbor who's very grumpy? Richard, did you say what you wanted to say?
Well, I was thinking about, we're in the likeness of God. Well, obviously, I don't think that particular phrase means that we look like God. God, in my concept, is something amorphous, no body, just all mind, but can, do
Right.
things for good. Even if he destroys something, it's supposed to be for good, or for retribution for something that we as humans did wrong. But I'm not sure about that particular statement. What he's saying about it, that's more important than being nice to our neighbors. So I have to disagree with Rabbi. Is it Aziz? Aziz?
Right.
Azai?
Zai?
I-
Of course, again, he's far more erudite than I was and lived around the first century BC or so.
Was that what it says?
No, well, no, that's what I'm assuming because they're all talking about Hillel.
Yeah, so Hillel was around the year 0 or so,
Yeah,
presumably. So maybe Ben Azai was a little bit. I
Maybe.
would have, if you asked me, I would have thought he was in the first century.
yeah, well, or thereabouts. Yeah.
But what's
Yeah,
100
man.
years? What's 100 years between friends? Marcia.
When you were talking about this person that was just seeing everything negatively, there are people you just can't, I mean, they're just negative, And I know there have been people in our congregation that I fool around with them and they always have something bad to say about anything. And oh, come on, let's, I would fool with them and tell, basically say to them in a fooling around kind of manner, come on, cheer up. You're looking at the dark side of everything all the time, and there are people just that are like that, and they just make themselves miserable, and you can't change that. But
No.
I think this is saying is more likely is, you know, treat people respectfully, and if you can help them, help them. And if you can do something nice for somebody, do that. And I think people come around after a while. Our congregation has a really good reputation because people are generally pretty nice to each other, and that's a real important thing. I think as a seeing it as a whole, you know, one of our classmates here who isn't here today, her son-in-law is looking for a congregation to move out here from the East Coast. And he went to visit several congregations, and some other places, nobody would come up and say hello to him or talk to him or things like that. And he got
Right.
turned off. So I think it makes a difference on how you treat people, you know,
Yes. Well,
attitudes.
I went with a candor once, many years ago, to a congregation north of Miami in Florida. And we sat through the service. I'm a rabbi, she's a cantor. And then after the oneg, I tried to circulate and say hello. Nobody would talk to me. And then the cantor was talking to the president of the temple and says, "Oh, that's a rabbi." Oh, and then they all rushed over to me like, and this happens, this when I used to just travel around. Now I have limited time off, so I don't do as much just bouncing in the congregations. But and there were some very bad cases, in New York, nobody would, in Queens, nobody would talk to me, you know, and very, just you can't imagine
It's
what's
upsetting. Yeah.
and yes, Marion.
In finally choosing this congregation, I went to several congregations around the area. And this is the first congregation that as soon as I came in the door was welcoming me and talking, finding out about me and asking me to do things. It's just a whole congregational feel of, I mean, I know there's some backbiting, it's out there somewhere, but it doesn't feel that way. Our congregation feels nice and feels welcoming and feels at home. And I think that's really important because some of the others do not at all. I went to Soleil and not one person said hello.
Mhm.
So, and
Don't-
I mean, they don't even
don't-
recognize the visitors.
Don't encourage me. We're on tape, so I don't want to say anything too specific, but yes,
All
I
right.
would, I would second what you said, totally. And does this come from this commandment here? Love your neighbor as yourself. Does that mean when you see somebody at the oneg, you should at least say hello? Even if it's
Yeah.
even if it's not loving your neighbor as yourself, it's at least be slightly friendly.
Right.
Okay,
You can always find something nice to say.
Chris has a flight. He's in one of those F-35s that they shooting off from Luke Air Force Base. So
Cessna 172, but anyway, we'll see you all
Okay.
next week. Thank you.
Take care, Chris. Thanks,
Hi,
Ian.
Chris.
Joining us.
Bye-bye.
Yeah.
Good meeting you.
okay, so
Sorry.
other comments? If not, then back to Pam.
Can I pass the baton?
Sure. Who'd like to take the baton?
I'll take it if no one will take it. Okay. Where are we? We are told,
Top of page 135, right column.
Moses?
Either
Then
that,
is the,
depends on what, do you want to do the box, Rabbi?
Um, yeah,
Okay. Why should we love our neighbor? Commenting on the commandment, love your neighbor as yourself, I am the Lord. Ibn Ezra explains that one is responsible to love other human beings because the one God has created all of them.
okay, so Ibn Ezra was, I believe, a 13th century Spanish biblical commentator. He was considered very far ahead of his time, so he began to very gently make some comments about how things in the Torah could not have all been written, at the same time, particularly, the parts where Moses had already died. So he's seen as anticipating by 700 years or 600 years modern biblical criticism. So very interesting guy. And here he says, love your neighbor as self. Why? Because God created all of us. So it's kind of a very nice universal sentiment. Since God created all of us, we have to remember that.
mhm.
Might want to strangle certain people.
But it's strangling with love.
Well, I guess that's a good point because it doesn't say don't strangle people, it just says love them. And so there are, for example, parents that, that do literally strangle their kids out of love, supposedly. They may be mentally ill, but so it's here we're focusing on the emotion, not the practice, and or that's what seemed the pasuk seems to say. So we're trying to figure out how to move that from the emotion to practical application.
Behavior.
Marcia, were you willing to read?
Yeah, sure. Moses Maimonides also seeks to clarify what the Torah means when it commands, love your neighbor as yourself. What is meant, says Maimonides, is that you should love your neighbor with all the qualities and modes of love with which you love yourself. In other words, the quality and nature of our love must be of the highest category, parallel to that which we employ in promoting our own welfare. Maimonides, however, realizes the difficulty of the challenge of loving others. Therefore, he suggests it may not always be possible for human beings to provide an equal quantity of concern for the welfare of others. Love and concern, he counsels, are expressed in varying intensities depending upon the circumstances. There are times when promoting the welfare of others may clash with what we believe is in our own best interest and welfare. In such cases, Maimonides suggests that the intensity and quantity of our love may be compromised. The Torah, Maimonides concludes, does not command the extent of our love, but rather the genuine character of it. As to the character of our love, Maimonides is quite specific. Loving your neighbor as you love yourself means visiting the sick, comforting mourners, joining a funeral procession, celebrating the marriage ceremony with bride and groom, offering hospitality, caring for the dead, or delivering a eulogy. Concluding his list of examples, Maimonides writes, all the things that you would want others to do for you, do for your brothers and sisters.
All right, thank you.
Um,
Comments? Maimonides, do you like what he says or not? Richard,
Yes.
a fellow doctor.
Talking about this the whole time, that we should, treat our neighbors justly. We can't maybe not love our neighbor, but certainly treat them justly and be nice to them as nice as we can. Sometimes neighbors are very antagonistic and you have to really stay away from them. Or they do things to your property that you have to call the police on. That's a different story. But the normal neighbor, you like them, you talk to them maybe. And that's it. I mean, my neighbor next door is from Canada. I barely know her. Last year I didn't even see her. This year I made on purpose. I saw her in her garage, cleaning out her garage in the winter. So I went in to talk to her and found out she's from Canada, her name, where she was from in Alberta, and when she comes and goes. She stays here for 4 months out of the year and plays golf all the time. So I thought, oh, that was nice of me to do that. And I said, if you need anything, let me know. So that was, I think, being nice to your neighbor. And that's, I think, what we should do. And I think that's what Maimonides means.
I agree.
So do you accept Maimonides?
I think it's very logical.
He kind of flips the commandment. Remember, he's starting from the Torah, love your neighbor as yourself. And then he gets to a place where, that if you go to a funeral, just to participate, that's meeting that commandment. It's pretty far from the original intent, one would think. But
No,
you're okay with
I
that?
don't think so.
Okay, Marcia.
So many times I've gone to a funeral, usually it's when I know the person, even peripherally, but I go, and then afterwards, the family member who's there says, oh, it felt so good that these people showed up for my deceased, for me, and it makes a difference in somebody's, and they're so fragile at that time too. So when you show up for someone's friend's funeral, the family is really getting a real positive kind of feeling about it. As a collective, you come, to say goodbye to that person. It is a difference. And I think the word neighbor is not being the neighbor, just the neighbor, physically.
Everybody.
The community as a whole, I think. The other thing,
Bingo.
just as an aside, I was just reading, the surprise police were talking about exchanging names and phone numbers with your actual physical neighbor for safety's sake. And I'm going to do that with one neighbor on one side. They're fairly new. They just moved in a few months ago, and we have spoken oft times, but I think I'm going to bring a little business card over and say, here I am if you need
Hi,
something.
Steve. We're in Torah study.
Go ahead.
Okay. So anyway, so that was, it's just a hint that they're saying sometimes the police are saying you might need that person. So, to be there for you,
Okay, quick question, and Rabbi, maybe you can answer this too. What about country to country?
Question.
If we as
Go ahead, Marianne.
people are good to each other, well, it starts in your home. If you're good to the people in your home, and they will be good to the immediate community, the immediate community will carry. It's like playing telephone.
Yeah.
It just keeps getting bigger. And I think that there are some very angry people in the world. And there are things that can be fixed, but we just need to know, figure out how to fix them, who should fix them. I mean, it's very difficult, I think. But we can, if we start in our own homes and expand out as far as our reach will go, if everyone did that, there wouldn't be time to fight.
Well, that would be nice. Richard.
Expanding on that, Marianne, I don't think it's the people of most countries who are antagonistic. I think what happens is the leaders lead them towards that way. The Russian people are accepting the fact that Putin has invaded, Ukraine. They say, okay, he's invaded Ukraine. Now we're for him because he makes them do that. Otherwise, they get punished. Iran is the same way. I'm sure the majority of Iranians don't care about Israel that much, but the Iranian people want to destroy Israel, and they actually want to destroy everybody else in the Middle East and make it become a Persian thing like back 2,000 years ago,
Empire.
and change from Shia to Shia from Sunni to Shiite. No, but that's the leaders. I don't think that's the people in general.
How did the leaders get there?
Now, it's just like the Iraqi war. American people didn't that much care about Iraq, but the government did, and the president sent his troops in.
Does it matter if the troops are conscripted versus voluntary?
I don't think so.
And does it
We
matter
had
if
until 1977, and they went to Vietnam, or 73. Nixon, I think, left in 74, 75. It was 73 or 72 that he ended conscription. So our army now is all volunteer.
Mhm.
I don't think it matters. But it's the leader, not necessarily the people. But anyway, we're getting a little off the track.
Okay. So you like Maimonides? Is there anyone who opposes Maimonides?
Yeah.
Did he
He's
stretch
my
it?
kind of guy.
Well, he's a rationalist. He's a doctor. He and you would have
He's
a lot in
he's a rabble rouser.
Yes, he definitely got people angry. Okay. Marshall, you're going to continue reading Nachmanides.
Like Nachmanides also senses that loving another person with the same intensity and quantity of concern that one has for oneself is not possible. He bluntly declares that human beings cannot be expected to love their neighbors as they love their own souls. What the Torah means by the command to love your neighbor as you love yourself, Nachmanides argues, is that people should wish their neighbors well in all things just as they wish success for themselves. Nachmanides maintains that even if a person wishes another well in everything, in wealth and honor, learning and wisdom, he will not want him to be absolutely equal with him. He will want to be superior to him in some ways. The Torah recognizes this truth about human beings. That is why, says Nachmanides, the Torah condemns this form of selfishness. We are commanded to love your neighbor as yourself, so that we will learn to wish others success in all things, just as we wish well for ourselves, and to do so without reservations. Rabbi Meir Lev ben Yechiel Michael, that was a mouthful, known as Malbim, disagrees with both Maimonides and Nachmanides. He argues that the matter of loving one's neighbor is not an expression of feelings or wishing others success in all things. Instead, the commandment has to do with how one behaves towards others, with actions and not with thoughts. Drawing upon Hillel's negative teaching and upon the philosophical writings of a contemporary German philosopher, Immanuel Kant, 1724 to 1804, Malbim says that a person should not just wish for his neighbor what he wants for himself, namely advantage and protection from harm. He should endeavor to do everything that it is to the advantage of his neighbor, whether in terms of bodily health or success in business. And it goes without saying that he should not be responsible for doing anything to his neighbor that he would not wish to be done to him. For instance, if a person is prepared to harm his neighbor for the sake of his own advantage, he should ask himself whether he would wish this kind of conduct to be a universal rule. A person would say to himself, do I want to live in a world where everyone is free to do what I am about to do? See discussion on Leviticus, 1918. The idea
Okay,
that
good.
love, okay,
Stop there. So we have somebody who disagrees with both Maimonides and Nachmanides. So that's pretty hard to do. Nachmanides was a mystic from Spain, very different from Maimonides, and Malbim disagrees with both of them. And he bases himself on Immanuel Kant, the famous Enlightenment philosopher, who believed that morality was based on rational reason. Comments? Richard.
I don't think he's actually saying things differently. I just think he's saying it in a slightly different way. And he's saying, don't harm your neighbor, you know, and when we look at the news every night, you hear about a teenager who's just shot and killed his neighbor because they had a little argument. You say, well, that's not doing unto others as others you want to do unto you. So, so we see that all the time that that our society and the societies in the past had the same problem. I'm just think he's saying it in a slightly different way. That's from what I perceive when he
Yeah,
reads.
that kind of worried me as well. Harvey Field says, you know, he disagrees, but I'm not really sure I see the disagreement.
Right. I think it's just a different way he interprets, I mean, a different way he says it.
Yeah, I kind of want him to disagree, but I don't see it. Okay, Marion.
Whatever I
Donna?
was thinking, I lost.
Steve?
don't we all?
Yeah, been there, done that.
No.
Okay.
Should we go on to,
Sure, okay.
I'm bypassing the box because the discussion below, I think, continues from above the box.
Correct.
This idea that love for oneself and love for others are mutually connected forms the basis of modern psychologist Erich Fromm's classic work, The Art of Loving, 1974. Stressing the importance of self-love, Fromm writes, the idea expressed in biblical love your neighbor as yourself implies that respect for one's own integrity and uniqueness, love for and understanding of one's own self cannot be separated from love and respect and love and understanding for another individual. The love for my own self is inseparably connected with the love for any other being. Fromm explains that love is an activity. It is primarily giving, not receiving. In the act of giving, we do not lose, sacrifice, or give up that which is precious to us. Instead, giving allows us to experience our power, our vitality. In giving, Fromm observes, I experience my strength, my wealth, my power. This experience of heightened vitality and potency fills me with joy. I experience myself as overflowing, spending, alive. Giving is more joyous than receiving because in the act of giving lies the expression of my aliveness.
Has anyone heard of this book before today?
Yes. I had to
and
take psychology at some point. I don't remember the book particularly, but I do remember very, and it was very
Before
famous.
the book was written.
What?
I took psychology before the book was written.
Yeah. Yeah, but I did two actually, but I do, when this book came out, it made a big splash publicly, I think, as I remember. It was,
Oh, yeah, it was a bestseller.
right.
And, he was very informed by his Judaism. So Eric Fromm has come up in Torah study a number of times. And so here he's basically writing a treatise on this commandment, love your neighbor as yourself. And he's kind of tying it around, and that he's saying that that the love that one feels for oneself and the love that you hold for others are connected. They're organically connected. They're basically the same thing. Whereas you could see, well, the love for yourself is like selfishness, and the love for others is altruism. Then they're like opposites. So Fromm doesn't take that position at all. Yes, Marion.
Steve was waiting.
Yeah. Wasn't this during the hippie movement, the Flower Children?
Yeah, I mean it
Little
was
bit.
it was like the tail end of that, yes.
Yeah, so it kind of correlate with that as well.
That's an interesting thing I hadn't thought about, but probably I'd have to research Eric Fromm a little bit to see how much he was influenced
But
by what, but that would make sense. And does that strike you as a very flower childly kind of way of
I wasn't much of a flower child, but I loved working with other people and taking care of them or them taking care of me. That was always my philosophy and still is.
hmm. The Summer of Love was 1968, is that correct?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
Fromm himself, he had
It
written
was
some other popular
67.
things before that,
I'm
hadn't he?
sorry, it was 67. The Summer of Love took place in San Francisco from June to October 1967. So Steve, were you old enough to be there?
yes,
Not in
You
San
were, but
Francisco.
were you there?
no.
Oh, all right. Well,
We were busy.
you missed a great opportunity. You could be talking
Bless
all
you.
about Summer of Love.
Yeah.
Didn't Fromm write some other things previously that he were very popular also? Because
Yeah.
it wasn't just that book.
Right.
Very
A very famous psychologist, yes. Let me see, I'm just Googling him.
Thank you.
Well, if I just Google his last name, a dog food company comes up.
Mm,
He was a psychologist, psychoanalyst, sociologist, humanist, philosopher, and Democrat socialist.
Huh.
That's what it says in Wikipedia.
Could have his other writings.
So he was an MD as well, I think.
What did he write in the 60s or the 50s? Did he?
Yeah, born in, like Richard said, born in 1900, died in 1980. And he was raised Orthodox in Frankfurt. Frankfurt was the center of modern Orthodoxy. And you could see the influence in that very much.
Yeah.
And then in 1934, he got a job at Columbia University in New York. And he's considered a neo-Freudian. So, and then in 49, he became a professor in Mexico for a while. And in 57, he went to Michigan State and then eventually Switzerland. So he moved around a lot. But he described his religious position as non-theistic mysticism. So he went from orthodoxy to not believing in God, but you can see his struggle with it very much. Very interesting guy that might be worth further study. I mean, I could see doing a whole course on him. But you could see here the idea for him to build an organic theory of love. You know, what is love and how does one receive it? How does one give it? What is the connection between how we feel towards ourselves? You know, narcissism and selfishness. It's good to some degree, but if it's over too much, then it's not good. And how do you use those feelings? You can't not have feelings about yourself, but how do you use that to build healthy relationships with others? Marion.
People may not have good feelings about themselves because of their history, because of whatever. But if in his interpretation you give to others, you usually get back in not physical ways, but just get back more than you give. If you help children, they will love you forever. If you help other people, they will give back in kindness as well. And I think that it is possible to treat one's neighbor or a person in one's community well without necessarily feeling that you are everything you should be.
Mhm. Okay.
Okay, interesting.
Responses? Donna, Pam, Steve.
I tend to agree with you, Marianne. I mean, teachers to me were very influential in my life. I didn't feel like I had any, maybe a couple disagreements with them, but otherwise they were very big influences on me.
But Steve,
Yes.
Yeah.
yeah, I was reading about it was all these people commenting about teachers who made a difference in their lives. Everybody's got that special teacher.
Yes.
Always remember in your head, and you
Oh,
know,
yes.
that made a difference to you over the years, you know.
Absolutely.
Yeah, that's, you know.
So do you think we love our teachers, the teachers that inspire us?
Yeah, they're there with
Absolutely.
us at a certain point in our lives. They're there every day of the week, on weekdays, let's say, and they form a people's personalities, and with their attitudes, it makes a difference, you know. Whether it's elementary school or high school or whatever, is always that special teacher, you know. I
Mhm.
think
Can we love our politicians, our political leaders?
not the way we love our teachers. It's more personal.
Yeah.
Yeah, different
And one
category.
can love one, they make it difficult. One can love a politician, but usually they make it difficult.
Valid point, valid point.
I think that should be the motto of the week.
Yeah.
Love a politician.
Yeah.
Oh, I love it.
I mean, everyone in the country, not everyone, but 90% of the country loved John F. Kennedy. Did that make him a better man than some of the other
And he had a
presidents we've
lot of
had?
faults too. Right?
He
Yeah.
had plenty of faults, but at that time, the press wasn't so eager to report them
Right.
as they are now.
True. That's true.
And the country was, as a whole, in love with the Kennedys.
We were ready
Would-
for that at that point.
Would have stayed that way if he wasn't assassinated? We don't know. Same thing with Bobby Kennedy. We don't know.
Oh, I know.
You know.
So, yeah, that's,
But you
I
know,
don't know where I was going.
were-
I think I've
Donna?
got,
Go ahead.
Kennedys were an example of a family, and they certainly didn't do everything right as a family, but they were a family that had they had money, and they were examples for what so many people wanted. And besides that, they were extremely good looking. And and that led John F. Kennedy a long way, was because he was extremely good looking and had a beautiful wife, and a wife that came with money. And they were just what but so many people wanted and didn't have for themselves.
Yeah, well, Kennedy got a lot of help, from his father, and one of his advisors ghost wrote his book for him, and he got a lot of help. But but I think that there was tremendous love for Kennedy, before him for FDR, and there too, we know more today, you know, about FDR, but at the time, people felt that he had personally saved them from starvation, practically, or certainly from poverty.
And
And
Eleanor helped.
for better or worse, he was contrasted with Hoover, who refused to do anything. The truth is more complicated, but that, people, we've seen recently how people are so influenced by, social media posts that may not make any sense, but they see it and they believe it. And so before you had social media, you were, convinced by other things, just a newsreel or newspaper, whatever you had and whatever people said, you tended to believe. So, but does that mean you loved the leader? Well, I think some people would say yes, that love for a political leader can be very, very strong and very, very motivating under the right circumstances. And love for an ideal, right? And, you've all read Animal Farm, where the animals really want to do something and they really believe in it. And it's only slowly that they start to realize that the pigs running things aren't as altruistic as they had thought they were, and that not all animals are created equal, or all animals are created equal, but some more so than others. And but an ideal, I mean, you can there's people willing to die for an ideal, for a principle, for a ideology, for so that is a form of love, maybe not. Steve, comment?
Not at this time.
Okay, Pam? Okay. Okay, Marcia, do you want to read a little more?
Guido, I'm almost done. In defining genuine love as giving, Fromm stresses that one must learn to give oneself even before giving, to give to oneself even before giving to others. Love of others and love of ourselves are not alternatives. Love in principle is indivisible as far as the connection between objects and one's own self is concerned. Genuine love, Fromm writes, is an expression of productiveness and implies care, respect, responsibility, and knowledge of oneself and others. It is an active striving for growth and happiness of the loved person, rooted in one's own capacity to love. If, Fromm warns, an individual is able to love productively, he loves himself too. If he can love only others, he cannot love at all. Confused, okay. The Torah's command to love your neighbor as yourself continues to provoke significant questions about the meaning of love. Despite the various opinions and definitions, however, it is clear that Jewish tradition challenges us to love ourselves by striving for self-understanding, respect, and a sense of our powers for giving, and to transform our love of self into a generous love for others.
Okay, so, but the paragraph before the conclusion, Harvey Fields loves these generic conclusions that don't really say anything. So I usually skip them completely, but we read
That
it.
Fromm thing is confusing. Am I the only one confused?
The paragraph before the end, it says, if An
Yeah, that-
individual is able to love productively, he loves himself too. If he can love only others, he cannot love at all. That your love as an emotion begins with love of self. If you cannot love yourself, you cannot love others. If you cannot love spouses or parents or children, then you cannot love neighbors. So, you know, I'm adding to what Fromm said. Marcia, why does that strike you
I
as
don't know,
problematic?
but then I got into this, the next bit about it is an active striving for growth and happiness rooted in the capacity to love. Okay. If an individual is able to love productively, he loves himself too. If he can love only others, he cannot love at all. Well, that's sort of what you just said, we're talking
Mhm.
about.
I was summarizing him.
Yeah, I know.
Right, right.
Well,
In other words, if you go to a love academy, well, I mean, I guess I guess we could change. I mean, you start loving your mother, right? When you're a baby, you're inside your mother. That, you know, your mother is like God. I mean, kind of literally.
Mhm.
And you're born and you're totally dependent upon your mother in 99% of cases. Your father goes to work and comes home, and as a baby, you're not even aware. But the mother you're aware of, and if the mother doesn't feed you either breast milk or bottled milk, but it's usually the mother that gives you, you know, and then if you don't get that, you start crying. And if you don't get that, then you get weaker and you would die. So your need for a loving relationship with your mother, very dependent relationship, but loving one, starts with your mother. But then as you grow up, you become more independent and you have to love yourself. And then other forms of love come out from that. Does that sound like what Fromm is saying? Does that seem reasonable?
maybe
So what's our conclusions here about love? Can you love
nice people.
your neighbor as yourself?
I think you have to be nice to people.
Okay. Marion?
Oops.
You have to unmute, Marion. There you
I
go.
don't think that the commandment means to give the same romantic, deep love to your neighbors as you give to yourself, to your family. But it means that we're all in a way a family, and we need to love each other or care about each other, respect each other, and do nice things for each other. And I think that that is the essence of love thy neighbor as you love yourself, is you need to do for the neighbor as you would do for yourself.
Okay. Steve, Pam, Donna?
I agree with that totally. And you do for others, and you as you'd like them to do for you if you needed what they needed. And
And thank God that it isn't you who needs it. That's
that's right. But because you can do that, then you can help your neighbor, or it doesn't mean somebody that lives right next door. It means anybody.
right.
Yes,
Everybody in your community, your
yes.
individual community.
Mhm.
Okay.
Agreed.
So when we see the commandment, thou shalt love thy neighbor as thyself, you don't have to take it literally, but you have to take it seriously.
Agreed.
Agreed.
Mother's Day is Sunday.
Yes.
Which,
How appropriate. That's
Hey kids, it's Mother's Day.
Uh, um, I want to comment or make a thing here in regards to, in about another 3 weeks, we will be in volume 3 of, Field's, books. And that starts on the 5th day of June. So if you don't have the book, the Numbers in Deuteronomy volume, you might want to pick it up.
Marion, do you have the book, Marion?
You do.
Yes, I do.
Good.
There's that Abe's book, when I was looking, Miriam Hirsch a while back, when she was still in our class, was looking for the books, and Jan called me, and we couldn't find certain volumes on Amazon, but we went to
Oh.
Abe's books, abe.com. What is it?
Mhm.
Abe.com. It's
I've
abe.com.
also used thrift books.
And thrift books,
Oh.
yeah, and so there are options out there that are not Amazon if you can't find it on Amazon. That's what
There's also Better World Books, which is a charitable organization.
Oh, really? I didn't know that one.
You buy a book and they provide a book to someone in an impoverished or in low income area in the United States and around the world.
Nice.
Yeah,
The
so
reason I mentioned the Abe thing was because they can carry Jewish themed books oftentimes.
yeah, that would be good.
Okay.
Well, the nice thing about thrift books is it's quick and it's usually not expensive.
Oh, okay. Okay. But I want to bring that up, and I don't know, Rabbi, do you have any other announcements? I know you're gonna be gone for the next 3 weeks. So,
That
Yeah,
new
well-
class looks interesting that you're doing in June.
Yeah, there's 2 classes. The other one hasn't been publicized yet. But yeah. So you're all invited to sign up for either of those, and I'll see some
Yeah.
Friday night.
okay,
So we'll do the
Okay.
final blessing after
Okay.
Torah study. Are you ready?
yes, sir. Baruch,
Baruch
atah
atah Adonai,
Eloheinu melech haolam, asher natalanu Torah
Emet,
v'chayei
Chayei
olam
Olam,
nota b'tokeinu.
Enu,
Baruch
Baruch
atah
atah
Adonai,
Adonai,
notein haTorah,
Notein HaTorah,
blessed is Adonai our
Adonai
God,
our God,
ruler of the universe,
earth,
who has given us a teaching of truth, implanting within us eternal life.
Blessed
Blessed
is
is Adonai,
and
giver of the
giver of
Torah.
the Torah.
Amen. All right, everyone, have a good rest of the week.
Wait a minute, before you leave,
sir.
on your thing, I think today or yesterday, there's a green thing.
Yes,
Yeah, I already told them about the.
I'm aware of it. I'll tell
They had
Patty
an old
to
thing to get
change
on.
flat.
Oh, Steve, would
Yes.
you make sure I'm on the list? Because I didn't get your email.
Okay, you're on the list, but I'll make sure. Okay,
Thank you.
Hi,
Yep.
everyone.
bye-bye.
Bye.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.